At 7 in the morning, the house felt wrong. Not broken or chaotic, just wrong. It was too still, like someone had paused life on a remote. The kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful but suspicious. The fridge made its usual humming noise. The wall clock ticked in perfect rhythm. But the space in between those sounds felt thick. Unnatural. Melissa was home, technically. But something was off the second I opened my eyes. I hadn't even gotten out of bed yet, and I could already feel it. The shift. Her side of the bed was occupied, but her body was curled toward the wall, fully clothed. Still in the black dress she left the house in last night. Her makeup smudged, hair slightly matted. Sand stuck to the hem of her dress like she'd been sitting barefoot near the shore. That alone wasn't alarming. We live near the coast, but we hadn't gone to the beach together in weeks. Then came the smell. It hit me as I leaned closer, instinctively checking if she was okay. Not alcohol, well yes, that too, but under it something else. A sharp scent of cologne that wasn't mine. I wear cedarwood and leather. This was citrus and musk. Someone else's signature. I stood up and backed out of the room quietly. Not in a dramatic way, like in the movies, no slow motion, no thunderclap. Just confusion. Unease. I didn't want to wake her. I didn't want to talk. Not until I figured out how I even felt. The hallway felt colder than usual as I made my way to the kitchen. And that's where the silence fully took shape. The overhead lights were still on. Not the soft amber ones we use in the evening to wind down, but the bright LED kind, the ones we usually hate because they make everything look too real, too harsh. The kitchen table hadn't been cleared. 2 plates. One used, one untouched. Her wine glass, still with a smear of lipstick. My chair had been pushed slightly back from the table, as if someone had sat there and stood up in a rush. Her phone was there too, face down, screen black. I picked it up out of habit and pressed the button. Dead battery. Melissa never let her phone die. She once told me it gave her anxiety, being unreachable. Said it reminded her of losing her mom young, never knowing when a call would be the last. That stuck with me. So for her to let it die? To be unreachable for a full night? It didn't make sense. Next to the sink was an empty wine bottle I didn't recognize. It wasn't from our usual stash, and I would have remembered buying this one. It had a hand-drawn label with a coastal map design. I flipped it over. Red Haven. Bottled exclusively for Sandbar Lounge. Seaside. My stomach dropped. That was the place we'd visited once, maybe a year ago. She said she hated it. Too loud. Too many drunk tourists. We never went back. I stood there staring at the bottle like it might explain itself. Instead, my mind filled in the blanks. She said she was going to dinner with coworkers. Just a small thing. Nothing fancy. She told me as she pulled her hair into a loose bun by the hallway mirror. She wore that black dress, the one I liked, the one that made her nervous about the way it hugged her waist. "You look great," I'd said, watching her tuck a gold hoop into her left ear. Too good for a work thing, honestly. She laughed it off. "It's at a nicer place this time. No weird bar food." I remembered offering to drive her. She said no, claimed she didn't want to bother me on a weeknight, that she'd Uber both ways. Fair enough. I kissed her on the cheek and told her to text me when she was heading home. She never did. By 10, I had texted her once. "Everything okay?" No reply. By midnight I'd called. Straight to voicemail. At 2:14 a.m., I gave up and slept on the couch with the TV on low volume. A documentary playing that I couldn't follow. And now she was home. As if nothing had happened. As if it was normal to vanish for an entire night with no explanation and return smelling like an unfamiliar man's cologne. I didn't know what to think yet. I was trying not to jump to conclusions. But it wasn't just about this one night. It was the accumulation of things. The little warning signs I hadn't wanted to acknowledge. Her distance lately. The way she'd startle when I entered a room too quietly. How she always seemed just a little too quick to turn off her phone screen when I sat beside her on the couch. And now, this. Out of habit, I sat at the kitchen island and opened the news app on my phone. Scrolled mindlessly, just looking for something to distract me. But that's when I saw it. A headline. Minor accident near Riverside Lake. No injuries, one vehicle towed. The timestamp said 3:08 a.m. I tapped the article. A photo sat at the top, taken just before sunrise. A familiar curve in the road, a yellow streetlight leaning slightly to the right from the impact. I stared at the image longer than necessary, my eyes tracing the bend of the road, the cracked pavement. It wasn't just the location that felt familiar. It was that exact streetlight. A few hours earlier, Melissa had posted a story on Instagram. I tapped through it at work, just a selfie in the car, sunglasses on, wind in her hair, captioned, "Finally Friday Dizzy." I hadn't paid attention to the reflection in her lenses then. Why would I? But now, as I replayed it in my head, I saw it. That same leaning streetlight, curved in the background. The same cracked pavement. She had been there, at Riverside Lake. She deleted the story sometime after midnight. I only realized because I checked again before going to bed. Thought maybe she'd posted something else. Some clue as to where she was. But the post was gone. Deleted like it never happened. Only I remembered it. I remembered it clearly enough to be sure. She lied. I didn't say anything right away. I just sat there with the phone in my hand, the photo on the screen, and 1,000 thoughts storming through my mind. I wasn't angry yet. Not even hurt, if I'm being honest. Mostly I just felt numb. Like my body was in the room but my thoughts were somewhere far ahead. Already living in the aftermath of something I hadn't caught up to. A few minutes later, I heard her stir upstairs. The rustle of the bedsheet. The quiet creak of the floorboards as she got out of bed. I didn't move. I waited until she stepped into the kitchen, her eyes half closed, like she wasn't ready to be awake yet. She smiled when she saw me, rubbing her eyes. "Hey!" she mumbled, voice scratchy. "What time is it?" I didn't answer. She reached for the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, and took a sip before she noticed the wine bottle still on the counter. Her face changed for half a second, just a flicker. Most people wouldn't have noticed, but I did. "You get that from Sandbar?" I asked casually, gesturing at the bottle. She froze, just for a beat. "Huh? No, I think that's from one of the girls. I was with Claire and Jen. We stayed over at Claire's. My car wouldn't start, so we just opened a bottle and crashed." I nodded slowly. She avoided eye contact. Her phone, still face down and lifeless, buzzed faintly from the table. Just once. A ghost vibration. The kind that happens when a phone turns back on after dying. But neither of us moved to check it. She got back into bed after that, as if nothing had happened. As if I hadn't noticed the dress crusted with sand or the way she hesitated when I asked about the wine bottle. She didn't ask me why I was up early or why I looked like I hadn't slept. She just walked past me, yawning, her footsteps light like she didn't want to wake the truth. I stood there in the kitchen long after she went back upstairs. The sunlight was starting to slide in through the blinds, turning the floorboards a soft gold. That used to be my favorite part of the morning, those quiet minutes before emails and calls and to-do lists. Now it just felt like the light was exposing something I'd been trying not to see. It would have been easier to believe her story if it weren't for everything else. Everything that had been building over the past few months. All the subtle signs. All the little gut punches that I'd brushed off at the time. I remember the first one now like it had a spotlight on it. A few weeks ago, she came home from the gym at 9:45 p.m. Even though she usually went in the mornings. Her hair was damp, and she was glowing not from sweat, but from something else. I asked how her workout went, and she said fine, but her voice was distant, like she was mentally elsewhere. I reached for her gym bag to take it upstairs for her, and she snatched it back without even thinking. "I got it," she said way too quickly. "It hit me just now." She never brought the bag back down. I never saw her actually use it. She'd leave with it, come home with it, but it always looked untouched. Like a prop in a performance she was giving just for me. Then there were the clothes. New ones that showed up suddenly. Tops, dresses, even lingerie. Not hidden exactly, but not shown off either. They'd hang in the closet for a few days, and then they'd vanish. Not into the laundry, not into the donation pile. Just gone. I assumed she was returning them. But now I wonder, was she wearing them for someone else? Was there a whole version of her out there I never got to see? And the perfume. That bothered me more than I admitted at the time. She had brought it home from a weekend conference in the city. She said it was complimentary from the hotel. Some fancy European brand I've never heard of, she told me laughing. But she only wore it when she left the house alone. Never with me. Never to work. It was warm and floral and distracting. Like it wasn't just perfume but armor. A transformation. It became part of a new routine. Friday nights out with the girls. The same conference friend, texting her late. The way she always turned her screen away when I walked by. The red flags were everywhere, but I trained myself not to look at them directly. I told myself I was overthinking, being paranoid. I didn't want to be the kind of man who questioned his wife every time she left the house. I trusted her. I wanted to trust her, and that's what made it so easy for her. She had changed her passwords a month ago. Said she was locking down after a phishing scam at work. Reasonable. Smart even. But when I asked for the new ones, something we always shared, just in case, she said she hadn't updated her master list yet, that she'd give them to me later. She never did. A few days after that, I noticed the bank statement had a $200 transfer I didn't recognize. Not a charge. A transfer. I brought it up, thinking it might have been fraud, and she dismissed it immediately. "Oh, that's for a bridal gift," she said. "Amanda's bachelorette thing. I sent cash to one of the bridesmaids." There was no wedding invitation on the fridge. No photos of the bride-to-be. I didn't even know who Amanda was. But I didn't ask again. Maybe I didn't want to know. Then there were the long showers. Not that long showers were new, but these were different. Always after she got home late. She'd lock the door even though she never used to. I'd hear the water running, then silence, then her phone buzzing softly through the bathroom door. Once I heard her laugh in there. A real, soft, unguarded laugh. The kind that people let out when they think no one's listening. But no one else was in the house. And still she laughed. At the time, I convinced myself she was watching something on her phone. A funny video, a podcast. Something innocent. But that laugh, something about it didn't feel directed at a screen. It felt. Int asterisk mate. Now, standing in the kitchen, all these memories came rushing back like they'd been waiting for me to finally notice them. Like they were puzzle pieces that had been scattered across the table for months. And I was only now realizing the picture they made. She was pulling away. Not suddenly, not all at once, but gradually, carefully. And I had let her. Not because I didn't care, but because I believed in us. I believed in the history we had, in the rhythm of our life. I thought the distance was just a rough patch, something that would pass with time. But that distance wasn't a phase, it was a direction. A slow, intentional drift toward someone else. I leaned against the counter and stared out the kitchen window. The neighbors' sprinklers had come on. Water arced over their lawn like nothing in the world was broken. Like everything made sense. I remembered the first time Melissa and I went to the beach together years ago. She had buried her toes in the sand and told me she hated the ocean. Said it made her feel small. I told her that's what I liked about it. The way it reminded me we're just specks in something bigger. She laughed and said, "Well, I hope I'm not just a speck to you." I told her she wasn't. And I meant it. But maybe I'd become one to her. Maybe she needed to feel bigger again. Not in a cruel way. Not in a spiteful way. Just in a way that meant I wasn't enough anymore. Or maybe it was cruel. Maybe I was giving her too much grace. Too much benefit of the doubt. Maybe she hadn't drifted away, maybe she ran. I went upstairs an hour later and found her still asleep. Her phone now charging on the nightstand. I glanced at it, then away. I had never checked her messages. Not once. Not even now. Part of me still believed that if I crossed that line, I'd become someone I didn't want to be. Someone suspicious. Controlling. But the truth was, I already was suspicious. And I had every reason to be. That's what bothered me most. Not just the lying, but how easily I had learned to live with it. The next morning, I woke up before her again. Not by choice. I didn't sleep much. Just lay there in the dark, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling as the hours passed. My thoughts kept looping. The wine bottle, the beach sand, the fake story about car trouble. Her scent, that unfamiliar cologne still lingering in the sheets. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was instinct. Melissa's breathing was slow and steady beside me, peaceful even, and for a moment, I hated how easy it was for her. How she could sleep through all this while I was unraveling inch by inch. I got out of bed as quietly as I could and headed downstairs. I didn't know what I was looking for. Maybe some clarity, some excuse to believe I'd misunderstood everything. But that hope was starting to wear thin. Her laptop was still open on the coffee table from the night before. A dim light blinked from the screen, waiting for a password. I paused, chewing the inside of my cheek, then typed in the one I'd always known. Her birthday plus the initials of her favorite author. It worked. Part of me had expected her to change it. But maybe that was the problem. She still thought I wasn't looking. The desktop flickered to life and I moved the trackpad, not sure where to begin. The screen was cluttered, half-finished documents, folders labeled Work Trip and Planning 2025. All looked professional, innocent. But then I noticed the cloud drive icon blinking in the top corner. I clicked it. The folder list popped up, syncing slowly with the internet. I scrolled through them until one stopped me cold. It was titled Inspiration. That's what she used to call her wedding planning board. She'd kept a Pinterest folder by that name. I remember the way she smiled when she showed me fabric swatches and floral ideas, telling me she wasn't a bridezilla, just inspired. I hadn't heard her use that word in years. Out of curiosity or maybe just dread, I clicked. Inside were photos. Dozens. I thought they'd be quotes or house ideas or maybe some fitness plans. But they weren't. They were of her. And him. Melissa. Standing by the railing of a seaside balcony. Sunlight painting her skin gold. A man's hand on her waist. His face turned just out of frame. Another sh*T. His reflection in the mirror behind them at a hotel. He was tall. Broad shoulders. Neatly kept beard. I recognized neither his face nor his clothes. One photo caught my eye and sent a shiver straight through me. They were by our pool. My pool. The one I built with my own hands last summer. Poured the concrete, installed the lights, picked the tile. I had sweated through weekends to make that space something special for us. Our little oasis. And there she was, sitting at the edge in a swimsuit I'd never seen before. Legs dipped in the water. Him kneeling behind her, shirtless, grinning. The timestamp said it was taken 3 weeks ago. I stared at it for a long time, not blinking. My hands felt numb. I clicked to the next image without even realizing it. Then the next, and the next. Her lips brushing his cheek in a mirror selfie. Their fingers laced together at a table. The same wine bottle from Sandbar in the background. Her, asleep in a hotel bed, the angle from his perspective. There was one where she wore that same black dress, the one from the other night. The hem still had flecks of sand. But this time she was barefoot, holding her heels in one hand. They were walking along the beach at sunset, side by side, their heads tilted toward each other. That photo was dated yesterday. I stopped, closed the laptop slowly, hands trembling. Everything inside me was quiet. Not the quiet that comes before a storm, but the kind after it. The damage already done. The wreckage already visible. All that was left was the stillness of knowing something had ended. This wasn't just emotional distance anymore. This was evidence. Clear. Undeniable. Framed in 1080p and timestamped with metadata. She had brought him into our home. Not just her betrayal, but her comfort in it. That's what hit me hardest. The casualness of it all. The way she smiled in those photos. At ease. As if this was just her life now and I was no longer part of it. I stood in the middle of the living room, staring at nothing. I could hear the birds chirping outside, the faint hum of the ceiling fan, the neighbor's dog barking. The world kept moving, stupidly unaware of how mine had just caved in. I don't know how long I stood there before she came down the stairs. Melissa's hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, her face still soft from sleep. She looked at me and smiled like she always did, like nothing was broken. "Morning," she said. "You're up early again." I didn't answer. She didn't notice. Just padded into the kitchen, humming something under her breath. Probably a song from the playlist she used when she cooked. She opened the fridge and grabbed oat milk, poured it into her coffee mug, and gave it a lazy stir. As if I hadn't just seen the truth. As if our marriage hadn't been turned inside out on a cloud drive folder. I sat down at the edge of the couch, not sure what my body was doing anymore. She glanced over her shoulder. "You okay?" Still, I said nothing. Because what do you say when the words you want to use are too sharp to speak out loud? She walked over and stood in front of me, her brow furrowing. "Did something happen?" I almost laughed. "Did something happen?" I looked up at her. This person I had loved, trusted, planned a future with, and for the first time I didn't recognize her. She felt like a stranger wearing my wife's face. "You were at the beach," I said quietly. She froze. "What?" "Yesterday. Sandbar Lounge. Then the beach. You took photos. With him." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. "You saved them," I added. "To the cloud. Under inspiration. That was our word, remember?" Her eyes darted away, her breath catching. I didn't shout. I didn't accuse. I didn't need to. The silence between us carried more weight than any screaming match ever could. Eventually, she sat down across from me, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "I was going to tell you," she whispered. I didn't know how. That's when I felt it, not anger, not betrayal, just disappointment. Not in her, in myself, because I had known. I'd known for weeks, and I let it slide. Let myself believe the lies because believing them hurt less than admitting the truth. But now there was no room left for pretending. The truth had a face, a time, place, and the worst part? She didn't even try to hide it. There were no screaming matches, no slammed doors, no broken plates, no crying on the floor. None of the things I thought might happen when you finally catch the person you love holding someone else's life in their hands like it's a second skin they can slip into when yours starts to feel too tight. Instead, there was silence. Not peaceful silence, weighted silence. The kind you feel in your chest, like it's sitting there pressing down with everything it knows but won't say. She sat across from me that morning, her mug going cold on the coffee table between us. Her hands clenched together as if she was holding on to something that had already fallen. I didn't ask for details. I didn't want them. I already knew enough. Melissa never cried. Not then. Not after. She just stared at me like she was waiting for me to explode. But I didn't. Maybe because I had nothing left to ignite. Or maybe because, deep down, I knew the worst part wasn't that she had cheated. It was that I wasn't surprised. I stood up. She didn't move. Just watched as I walked past her, into the bedroom, and opened the closet door. Half of it was mine. Neatly folded t-shirts, a row of button-downs, a couple of jackets I never wore but couldn't bring myself to toss. Her side still smelled faintly like the lavender sachets she kept between her sweaters. I hesitated for a moment, taking that in. Then I started packing. I didn't rush. I wasn't dramatic about it. I folded each shirt carefully, smoothed out the creases, placed them in the suitcase like I was preparing for a long trip and didn't know when, or if, I'd come back. She hovered in the doorway after a few minutes. "Are you really leaving?" she asked quietly. I paused, turned slightly toward her. "Do you want me to stay?" She didn't answer, and that told me everything. I packed 2 suitcases, one with clothes, one with everything else I couldn't leave behind. My passport, laptop, a folder of documents, my grandfather's watch, a few photographs that hadn't yet lost their meaning. There was a picture from our honeymoon in a small frame on my nightstand. Us standing on the deck of that cabin in the mountains, bundled in jackets, cheeks red from the cold. She was laughing in the photo. I wasn't even looking at the camera. I was looking at her. I didn't pack it, not out of spite, just because that version of her didn't exist anymore. Or maybe I didn't. Before I zipped the suitcase shut, I slipped in the note I had written the night before. At the time, I hadn't known exactly when I'd use it. I only knew I needed to have it ready, like a fire escape plan. just in case. It wasn't long. A few lines. You didn't lose me the night you stayed out. You lost me all the nights before that. The ones you spent slowly closing the door between us. I waited. I knocked. You didn't open it. So now I'm walking away. No threats. No accusations. Just the truth. I left it on the dresser, folded neatly. No name on the front. Just the way she used to leave me little notes years ago. Back when love was easy and mornings were warm. By noon, the bedroom looked different. Like someone had scrubbed half the life out of it. Her side still had color. Scarves, soft fabrics. The stack of books she never finished. Mine was bare. Empty hangers swinging like question marks on the rail. She sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes fixed on the floor. I wondered if she'd ever sat like that when he was here. On the same bed, the same sheets, with the same window view I used to love waking up to. I didn't plan for this to happen, she said softly. I know, I replied. But you still let it. She didn't cry. I didn't either. I think we both knew the part of us that could have cried had died weeks ago. Before I left, I did something strange. I walked through each room of the house. I don't know why. Maybe to say goodbye. Maybe to remember it all before it started fading. The living room still had our wedding photo on the wall. I stared at it for a long moment. We looked young. I remembered how nervous I was that day. Not about marrying her, but about dancing. I didn't want to mess it up in front of everyone. She kept whispering, "You're fine. Just look at me." And I did. That photo stayed on the wall. In the kitchen, I opened the cabinet and took out my favorite mug, the chipped one with the faded blue rim. She always told me to throw it away. I never did. It went into the bag. The last room I entered was the guest room. We never used it much. Occasionally when her mom visited. Once when we had a fight and I ended up crashing in there. The sheets were still rumpled from a few nights ago. She hadn't made the bed. That's where she'd been sleeping lately. The place we put the things we didn't want to see every day. I stood in the doorway and thought, this is how you end up alone. One silent choice at a time. I grabbed my keys and walked to the front door. She followed me but stayed a few feet back, like even now, there was still a barrier between us neither of us knew how to cross. You don't have to do this, she said, voice barely above a whisper. I already did, I replied. The door creaked open. Cool air met my face. I hesitated for a moment, not out of doubt, just the finality of it all. I didn't slam the door when I walked out. I left it slightly ajar. I figured she'd close it eventually. 2 days passed before I felt anything close to real emotion again. The first 24 hours were numb. I stayed in a motel off the highway, the kind with buzzing lights and thin walls. It smelled like bleach and old cigarettes, but it was quiet, anonymous. I sat on the edge of the bed most of the night, the TV playing some rerun I didn't care about, and thought about nothing. Or maybe I thought about everything, just not in full sentences. Melissa texted once. Let me know you're okay. I didn't respond. Not out of anger. Just, what was there to say? That I was fine? That I wasn't? Both were true and neither mattered. But by the second day, something in me shifted. I didn't want revenge. I wasn't out for blood. But I wanted clarity. The kind she wasn't going to give me voluntarily. So I went back. Not to her, but to the house. I knew she'd be at work. Her schedule hadn't changed in years. I still had my key. She hadn't locked me out. Maybe she didn't think I'd come back. Or maybe she wanted me to. I don't know. Walking through the front door felt strange. The house didn't feel like mine anymore. But it didn't feel like hers either. It felt like a place between lives. A waiting room. The kitchen was spotless. Her doing, I guessed. A way to pretend nothing had ever happened here. The wine bottle was gone. So was the note I left. But the silence? That was still here. Thick and echoing. I went upstairs, into the bedroom. Everything was just as I'd left it, her side full, mine bare. The closet door hung open slightly. A few of my shirts were still on the floor. I hadn't noticed them when I left. I didn't pick them up now. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for until I found it. Her handbag was on the dresser. She always kept it zipped and neat, like a little vault. But this time it was open just enough for a piece of paper to stick out. A receipt. Not from a restaurant, but a car rental service. Took a second for it to register. I pulled the receipt out. It wasn't just one trip. It was a printout of recent rentals tied to her loyalty number. Apparently she'd been doing it often enough to earn points. My stomach tightened as I read through the list. Some trips lined up with her supposed work travel. A few were from weeks she claimed to be visiting friends. But one in particular stood out. An address 30 miles west, near the coast. It wasn't near any conference centers. Not near any hotels. Just a random residential street in a quiet suburban neighborhood. I didn't think. I just went. It felt automatic, like a muscle memory I didn't know I had. I drove in silence, hands on the wheel, the road unfurling in front of me like it was daring me to turn back. But I didn't. The neighborhood was clean and quiet. Coastal. Palm trees, manicured lawns, kids' bikes in driveways. It looked like every postcard version of stability. The kind of place where nothing dramatic ever happens. I double-checked the address. The house was painted a soft blue, with white trim and a small porch. A tire swing hung from the oak tree out front. There was a golden retriever lying in the yard, tail thumping lazily in the sun. Then the front door opened, and he stepped out. The man from the photos, taller in person, clean-cut, confident, like the kind of guy you'd trust instantly at a dinner party. He looked like a magazine ad for good intentions. He wasn't alone. A woman walked out behind him, laughing at something he said. She was holding a toddler in one arm, balancing a sippy cup in the other. Their daughter, maybe. A little girl with bright eyes and curls that bounced when she moved. I froze. That wasn't just a man Melissa had been seeing. That was a family. And suddenly the betrayal widened. She hadn't just destroyed our life. She had helped this man burn down his too. Whether his wife knew or not, I couldn't tell. She didn't look suspicious. She didn't look broken. She looked happy. The irony made me sick. I sat in the car for what felt like a full hour. Watching. Processing. Not stalking. Not spying. Just observing the aftermath of my own wreckage colliding with someone else's. They weren't just cheating. They were duplicating. Two separate lives mirrored. Two partners lied to. Two homes built on silence. And Melissa had slipped between both like she belonged in neither, but wanted something from each. The man leaned down and kissed his wife's cheek, then lifted his daughter into his arms like it was the easiest thing in the world. I drove away before I did something I'd regret. On the way back, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt hollow, like a house that had been lived in for too long and then suddenly evacuated. Back at the motel, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the car rental receipt in my hand. I folded it once, then again, and slipped it into my wallet like it was some kind of evidence I'd need for court. Even though I had no plans for that. I didn't want to ruin her. I just wanted to understand why. Not why she cheated. That part had become easy to see. But why him? Why this life? Why juggle two homes, two stories, two sets of lies? What was she chasing that was worth that kind of damage? Because it wasn't love. It was something else. I picked up my phone and considered texting her. Not to confront. Not to accuse. Just to ask. Did you know he had a daughter? But I didn't hit send. She would lie. And I was tired of being lied to. An email arrived from a woman named Caroline, his wife. She'd found Melissa's contact in her husband's hidden messages. Turns out we were both lied to. We met at a cafe, swapped stories, proof timelines. She was calm, not vengeful, just tired. We agreed, no confrontations, no fireworks. We'd wait, let the truth unravel itself. Sometimes silence is the loudest response. On Melissa's birthday, I left a box on her porch, photos, messages, the key to the life she destroyed. Caroline did the same. Within days, both cheaters vanished from social media. Melissa went on leave. He moved out. A month later, I settled in a small coastal town. No drama, no pain. Just morning coffee, ocean air, and peace. She was gone. And for the first time, I was truly free.